Good morning. Can everybody hear me? All right, great. Thank you for being here. I am Matt Hall with ShowUp, and we're here today to talk about artist advocacy and supporting artist activism, how artist teams can do this, and how the greater industry can be empowering artist activist voice. We'll dig into that, but let me first introduce our friends that are here with us on stage, or I'll have you guys introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Kimbra.
My name is Bridget Kearney.
I'm Mike Heyliger.
And I'm Dan Iammatteo.
All right, and Dan, coming back from you, tell everybody where you work.
Sure. I'm the director of streaming at Chrysalis Records, and I also run a nonprofit called Queer Capita. We do advocacy in the music industry for queer people across all sectors.
I am a director of label management at The Orchard. My 18th anniversary somehow is tomorrow, which is weird. I also host and produce 2 podcasts and a radio show, and am on the executive board of a nonprofit called Sound Mind, which marries music and mental health.
And I play in the band Lick Street Dive. I play upright bass and write songs. And outside of that, I'm a solo artist, producer, songwriter, side musician, etc.
I'm a singer, a songwriter, a producer, and I also host a podcast called Playing with Fire.
Right on. Before we jump into questions and everything, I'll tell you a little bit about ShowUp and who we are and what we do. We may be new to the room because we officially launch today, but we have been working. Thank you. Thanks so much. And while we're new, I'm happy to say that we come to launch with some incredible partners on board already, including The Orchard, ADA, Symphonic, Downtown, and Empire. And ShowUp works directly with artists, labels, distributors, and anyone else within the music industry ecosystem interested in helping to elevate artists' voice and empower their activism. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, with our partners, we help create campaigns that integrate advocacy and activism, artist-led activism, into release strategies, touring strategies, and really any other area that an artist is operating. We also provide services to our labels and distributors that help those partners identify organizations that they may want to support. With some of our partners, we can do some pretty incredible things like allowing artists to direct a portion of their own royalties to an organization that matters to them. That happens through an API integration. All the accounting and everything happens behind a curtain, and the artist can make this commitment, share it with their fan base, let their fan base know that they're doing this, and it gives the whole artist team, management, labels, distributors, everyone else, another tool in the toolkit in a marketing and release campaign to create content, to engage fans, and to do it in a way that's as authentic to an artist's life and values as anything else maybe besides their own music. So let's kick it off. Dan, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us about some campaigns that you've worked on that have integrated activism and advocacy on the artist side?
Sure. A few years ago, I was working with independent artists at TuneCore on the artist partnership team, and I was working with an artist called Seb Deliza. And for her new album campaign at the time, she was wanting to raise awareness around the humanitarian crisis in Syria. And so the timing around her campaign also happened to be in Women's History Month. So we changed over the album artwork for her entire catalog at Spotify and showcased pictures of Syrian refugees at the time. And so this was an awareness campaign that drew attention back to her profile on the platform. It got good looks from, from the team at Spotify as well. And it was very visible on social media. So it was a way for her to tie in what she cared about and what was happening in the world at the moment into the art that she was making. And so the art, even though it's not necessarily about that, it was able to be a through line for her in her storytelling about why she was releasing the record and something that she really cared about, and a way for her to showcase something that wasn't just about her and her art. And we found that it was highly engaging for her fans. Her fans were really into this idea. And we ran the campaign. We switched it off at the end of the month, but I think overall it was a success from an awareness point of view.
Right on. But how about you, Mike?
So back in 2017, I created a campaign called Mindful Vinyl. And as part of that campaign, over the course of the next 3 years, we released 10 albums on green vinyl, limited edition, limited presses, and a portion of the proceeds from the sale of each record benefited the JED Foundation, which is a mental health organization based here in New York. We did 10 different artists. There were varying degrees of participation, but a lot of the artists did promote on socials, most notably Living Color, who were very instrumental. We re-released 2 albums of theirs on green vinyl. They both sold out completely, and I think Living Color's involvement personally in the campaign was a big driver in terms of getting that message across.
Right on. Bridget, with Lake Street Dive, incredible band, and your band has served as a big inspiration for the work that we do at ShowUp, and I'd go as far to say that ShowUp wouldn't exist if not for Lake Street Dive and certainly other artists like them. One of the things that I find so inspiring about what you guys do is the commitment to advocacy, long running, as well as the creativity in which you guys apply that commitment. You don't always support the same organization, you don't always do it in the same way, but you are very regularly doing something. Can you share with us some of the work that you guys have done?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there are a bunch of causes that we collectively care about, and it's been something that we've been kind of building into our business for a long time. Initially, it was more kind of geared towards like specific events that might be fundraisers for, Headcount or Oxfam, and those could be built into also like social media campaigns. And then more recently, it's been something we've just tried to build into like every single show. So that was something we were working with you on with Mission Impact, and Mission Impact was helping us with each show find different local nonprofits that could be sending representatives to our concerts, and we would be given some language from them that we could say on stage in terms of how they wanted to represent themselves, and just kind of direct everyone's in the room's eyes towards what they're doing. And hopefully, definitely thanks to that, there were people that were signing up on volunteer lists and people that were donating money there at the event to their local nonprofits supporting issues that we cared about. So that was like a really wonderful discovery that we could do that not only like in times of crisis and for specific events, but just kind of build it into the structure of everything that we do. And then another thing that we did in 2020 surrounding like the racial justice movement that was going on at that time, and we started a campaign, I guess, called Virtual Lessons for Actual Change. And the structure of that was that we got a bunch of our friends together, fellow musicians that wanted to be standing up in that moment, and everyone was volunteering their time to teach lessons online. And then the students that were signing up for those lessons, their money was going directly towards the racial justice organizations, Color of Change, NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, and a rotating list of nonprofits. But yeah, that was a really beautiful thing to experience, like just how willing our fellow musicians were to donate their time. And if you given the opportunity, given the platform, like so many people were on board with it. And then from a fan engagement perspective too, that it was really special to get to connect with our fans related to their interest in our music. And then also it's sprung a lot of conversations from that were around the cause that we were supporting.
Incredible stuff. The virtual lessons for virtual change was it was a beautiful website and interface. Like the work that went into that to not only bring the artists together to support this critical issue at that moment, the commitment and the resource that you guys put into that while being full-time, very busy artists is incredible. It's an incredible example of commitment, and alongside everything else. Kimbra, you've done a fair amount of work in Ethiopia and are also very active with causes around mental health issues. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that work is important to you and what it means to you as an artist to be working in this space?
At our dinner last night, we spoke about how sometimes the work chooses you, or, you know, the calling to certain parts of the world comes out of the blue, not even a planned thing. Going to Ethiopia was more of a personal pilgrimage of sorts, just for me, and I ended up learning so much and falling in love with the work that an organization called Tirza was doing. So I went along with this organization who helps build micro-enterprise programs for women with HIV. They also help the Ethiopians, to be clear, on the ground, are tutoring the children of the women who are HIV positive. And these children had a lot of needs when I was over there. I didn't really know how to help, but I thought that maybe with all the leftover merch I have from my tour, I could sell it off to get them some school bags and stationery for their first day of school. As they informed me, if they don't have those things on the first day of school, they will not get accepted and therefore not be able to go to school, which is a pretty massive deal. So it's really changed my life to be part of that. Another organization that I work with is New Zealand-based, where I'm from, called So They Can. They work in Kenya to help young women who are victims of a practice called genital mutilation that still happens in Kenya. A lot of these girls also don't go through school because they fall pregnant so early. So I wrote a song called Leave No Girl Behind that was, donated to raise funds for these young women to have the chance to go to school. So really rewarding work. And I haven't quite found a partner yet in the realm of mental health, but I am very passionate about it, mainly speaking on my social platforms. That's kind of how I communicate my passion for these causes, but looking to do more, and that's why I'm here, really.
So some of the work both of you have done is more public, some of it's public facing, some of it is, as you said, maybe more personal pilgrimages that you're not broadcasting to the world. But for the work that you've done that is public facing, Bridget, I guess I'll start with you. Can you talk to us a little bit about any fan reaction or engagement that you've seen kind of come back to you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think a lot of those like one-on-one interactions that we got to have with fans during virtual lessons for actual change, those are really strong bonds. Those are people that like I since then will go play a show, and after the show, those are the people that come and approach me and say, "I took a lesson from you on this thing," and and so yeah, that's seems to just create an even stronger connection with fans when you're connecting on sort of multiple levels, like a musical level, and also just like sharing the same interest and caring about the same causes and needs. Yeah, and then also I think in terms of like what musicians can do with their songs, there's like a version of advocacy and activism that's kind of like talking about things, and then there's a version that's singing about things, and that is like such an incredibly powerful tool. That's something I've like witnessed. Certainly at our shows, we're playing a song that is singing about a cause that we care about, and you see people singing along, and like that's incredibly powerful. And then also, at an event like this, sometimes you'll be on a panel and be talking about something, and then all of a sudden someone does a song. We were at a Women in Democracy Summit a few months ago and performed a song that we learned from the Staple Singers, Just Another Soldier in the Army of Love. And it just lit up the room and kind of brought this new energy to the room that then when these people that were speaking after us, who were women who had been in the government in Afghanistan and had like just like these really important stories to tell. And I feel like those things worked hand in hand together.
Kimbra, anything stand out to you in terms of reaction you've seen from fans as a result of the advocacy work that you do?
Yeah, I think obviously maybe most through personal messages, people writing and saying thank you so much for speaking out for this cause, or I donated because I saw that you donated, things like that, personal. I don't know, it's actually a little hard for me to tell what impact it has because I don't know how many people actually click the link that I put. I don't, honestly, you post a selfie on Instagram, it gets so many likes. You post something about kids in Ethiopia, and it doesn't get much. I don't know. It's just the way the world works, really. So I get positive feedback, of course, from people that seem to really care about my deeper values. You also have to be prepared as someone in the public eye to receive negative feedback, and it's important we talk about that here too. Yeah, and it's important that people are discerning about the motives, especially a white girl going to Africa. I mean, there's plenty of reason to be skeptical of that, which is why I make sure to partner with organizations that empower people on the ground that are doing the work. So Tirza, for example, is working alongside Ethiopian social workers that are working with the woman and helping them to do the work because they know the culture, the language, the religion, what the needs of the woman are far better than an American or New Zealander could. But yeah, that can be really difficult. And we talked about that last night. Sometimes if someone says something nasty about your involvement with a charity or perhaps calls you out for not doing more even, maybe then you lose confidence to do the work and actually, shy away, which is the last thing we want. So yeah, it's like good and bad in a way, but mostly good, definitely. I mean, yeah, most of the people that I interact with online are very kind, but there's always the flip side, right?
Yeah, and we talk a fair amount at ShowUp in conversations with artists about kind of the range where artists may fall in their interest, certainly, and their willingness and appetite to do this kind of work. And it's such a nuanced thing. And there are artists who are incredibly committed and working daily in service of this work. Other artists who are passionate about communities and ideas that matter to them, but don't know where to start, don't know how to get connected to an organization, and maybe feel like, well, I'm not an expert in this field, and, you know, perhaps they're concerned about negative blowback. Perhaps they're concerned about, well, I don't want to be a spokesperson for this community or the idea. I haven't educated myself enough. Any point of view an artist comes to us with is valid and important, and we learn from all that. Where we sit, we don't believe that you need to be qualified in any way to do this work. And ShowUp exists to help artists and labels and artist teams to make artists and those teams as comfortable in the work as we can, and of course to make it as easy and as successful as possible. And so they're great conversations to have, and they're conversations that we'll have with you and your artists when we have an opportunity to talk, because there's a lot that goes into it. But one of the things that we recognize is that, and I'm sure we all recognize that many, many artists are actively advocating, raising awareness, raising dollars for organizations supporting communities that matter to them. But in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, they're doing it themselves. What I mean by that is artists know how to reach their audience. They get on their socials, they speak directly to their fan base, and the returns on that are what they are in terms of the reach of advocacy, the success of driving dollars. And when artists do that, many cases, they're not doing that in concert with the rest of their team. And I'm not sure who's in the room here, but any artist that's signed to a label or to a distributor or an aggregator even has some of the biggest media mouthpieces in the world on their team, right? But their activism is happening in a vacuum. And ShowUp exists to create a system where you as a label, you as management, you as a distributor, you as a DSP can be a part of that activism, to amplify that artist's voice, to drive more dollars, drive more advocacy, and to systemize the process. So when these artists do these, in many cases, brave things, things that take a lot of heart and courage and work, that we can support them as artist teams and as industry to make sure that their voice is heard as broadly as it possibly can be. Dan, coming back down to this side of the table, to the industry side of the table, do you have a sense, Dan, of what an artist's activism might mean for fan engagement?
Yeah, I think that when we look to build campaigns with artists, we want to tap into, of course, the music, of course, the story of the record, but beyond that, what else is there on the table to work with? When we meet with artists, what are your interests? You know, we talk about content, we talk about, okay, like, everything can't be about pushing this record, so what else do you do? And so we build out content campaigns, we build out like calendars, we all do this work with our artists. And so I think that a piece of that could be dedicated to advocacy, where you're like, okay, well, what do you want to spotlight in this campaign? Like, how do you tie this into something that's not, that pushes things forward for somebody else? I think that with campaigns, we taking a more holistic approach in that sense will be beneficial for all. But particularly with fan engagement, I think that fans care more. You know, when you look at Gen Z, not to just boilerplate Gen Z, but they care more about these causes. They care when corporations are giving back. And I think this Pride Month, there was a lot of chatter online about how corporations weren't being as visible around their support of the LGBTQ community. Target pulled their Pride line in some capacity. So when these corporations don't show up, it's felt. I think that speaks to how you can pull engagement out of these fan bases in a way where you're meeting them where they care and they want to see this from people when they're interested in them, when they're interested in, the work that you're doing. I think that it can help them encourage to lean into the project that you're talking about at the time, if you can connect the dots to them to something that means something to them on a deeper level.
Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
I basically agree with what Dan said. I think that we live in a society now where it's not like you can put out a record and have the record stand on its own 2 feet as a piece of art. I think fans are looking for more from artists at this point. They're certainly looking for passion of some sort. And part of making music is expressing that passion, right? But they want to know causes that you're passionate about, things that are important to you personally. And I think, we have these social platforms with which almost the expectation is to discuss these passions. And, why not use the pieces that we have to discuss this stuff, to actually discuss it and discuss it openly and honestly. So I think, activism needs to be a ground floor conversation. When you're thinking about a project, speaking to management, this is what I'm writing about, this is what my record is about, but also these are things maybe not directly tied into the project that I'm also passionate about. How do we work this into the overall plan?
Right on. Bridget, from the artist's point of view, how does your team empower your work on this side of things?
Well, our team has been supportive on a bunch of different levels and kind of encouraged us to continue to make activism a part of the structure of our band. I think, an interesting thing about the idea of a team for a band is there are all these different players, and there are so many things basically that I don't know how to do. I need a lawyer to do the law side of things, and I need a label to do the label side of things, and a team of engineers to help me make the record. But I feel like there really isn't an industry-wide player on the team that is doing what you're talking about doing, that is being the experts in the field on activism and being supportive to artists as the person that helps them do the best version of that, in the same way that my lawyer helps me do the best version of law, et cetera. So that's just something that I think is really cool about this idea.
Thank you. Kimbra, we've talked a little bit about this, but do you feel like, are there ways that your team could be more supportive or has been supportive in the past? Would you look to help from your team to help you broadcast these things?
Definitely. I'm just going to be really honest. I was signed to Warner Brothers for 10 years. I'm now independent. I work with a distribution label. I've been through 3 management teams in the course of my career. I don't think I've ever had anyone sit down and say, Kimbra, you seem like you're really passionate about a bunch of human rights issues. What can we do to support that? How can we connect you with organizations and put a portion of your profit toward... every single endeavor I've done towards causes I care about has been me seeking it out on my own, or someone coming to me personally, writing to me. And that's not to say that my label and management haven't been supportive of the idea. It's not like they'd be like, but to be honest, sometimes I would get pushback like, this isn't good for the brand or something. And I don't mean that. I mean that more in the sense of this clashes with our campaign thing that we're doing. And sure, timing is important, but I see a major lack here. I have done this all personally, and I'm happy to do it because it is personal. My team don't necessarily care about those issues that I do, but I don't know, I guess that's why I'm here, is I just feel like there's so much work that needs to be done right now, and we all need to pull together. And I was signed to one of the biggest record labels in the world, and you're right, the resource, there was people dedicated to brand partnership, marketing, all of that. And of course it would come up, talk about charity and who you might want to align with. There's no follow-up, there's no active follow-up. It was just, a ghost in the room that, like, you can talk to this person if you want to get more involved with charity work. So yeah, honestly, I'm disappointed in that. And I think my feeling is that to get real support from my team, it would be me driving it, which is fine, and I'm happy to do that. But I would certainly like to feel that it's not just me. I have a lot of things to do, and a lot of, I want to be able to put forward an idea and then have a team run with it to support me to execute that. So yeah, that's the honest truth. I'm not throwing shade on, people I've worked with, but it's just not been a priority.
Yeah. And it might not be a priority because, while very few people that we talk to about ShowUp say that's a terrible idea, we're not interested in supporting anybody and money is the only thing that's important to us. There is degrees of that that are based in very practical concerns for labels, distributors, DSPs, everyone. It's a matter of how you resource your time and your money. And underlying our partnership work and how we grow in the industry is the question that goes unsaid or unasked, which is like, how does this affect our bottom line, right? Again, one person has told me in 2 years of conversations, a manager works with incredible artists, successful artists. He said, "Man, I don't care about this stuff. I'm working business for my artists, and that's the lane I'm in." It's the only person who was honest with me in that regard, and frankly, I respect him for it. Do your thing, man. However, what we believe at ShowUp is that there is a way to support this artist activism in a way that lifts all boats and touches the bottom line. We believe that we can, in the first place, empower the artist. We can drive that advocacy to at-risk, marginalized communities that's critically needed, dollars to those organizations. And we can create systems and creative campaigns that do this in concert with releases such that we're not only driving money and advocacy to the organizations that need it, but we're also driving traffic to the new release, to the new single, whatever that might be. And that's a big part of the work that we do with our partners at Orchard, ADA, Symphonic, Empire, and Downtown, and hopefully more soon. Mike, I guess a question for you would be, how do you see this type of work, like the long tail of it, kind of impacting the bottom line of the Orchard or of an artist's business?
I think that it will, my hope, I guess, is that it will attract artists and labels to us as a distribution company because they know that we're putting our money where our mouths are. I think it's really important that everybody realizes that they're, in a lot of cases, already activists. Look at all of the women in this room, all of the people of color in this room. Like, by showing up, you're an activist. It's Pride Month. All the queer people who are openly talking about queerness, you're an activist, by default. Now, you can own that or you cannot own that. And I think the power is in owning it. And if, I'm not an artist, obviously, but if I'm an artist or I'm a manager and I see a company that is supporting active activism, I mean, that's just said the same word twice, but whatever, then I'm going to feel more compelled to, at least take a look at that company, figure out what they're doing, and either join them or replicate it somehow.
Right on. Dan, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, how many people in this room donate to, local businesses or charities or whatever? And how do you donate? When you're doing it, using Venmo, Cash App, using some sort of software to do that. You're doing it in a way that's easy to do it. If they were you need to do a bank transfer to donate, how many of you would be able to do that? I think we look at that in the context of our industry, I think that's what is really important about, Matt, your work, is because you're building out an infrastructure and powered by the Orchard and other companies, other music companies. It's really important to give artists tools to make the lift easy, so that it's not like, okay, when the royalty statement comes in, now I gotta hit up my accountant and I gotta ask them to do the blah, 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 blah. If they can do it on the front end when they're building out the campaign, and they can say 10% of my royalties from this campaign are gonna go to this charity, and it's as simple as just making a decision, I think that we'll see the buy-in across artists, across labels, is just that much greater.
Mike, you spoke to the makeup of the room and the percentage of women and people of color here. Another sort of central tenet, excuse me, guys, in ShowUp's work is to, as best we can, support, create, make attractive, establish the imperatives of allyship. Of course, there's women and people of color in this room, but where are the rest of the straight white males, right? Can you speak, maybe Dan, we'll start with you and we'll bring it on down the line, but can you speak to the importance of allyship in this fight?
Sure. I mean, I think that when it comes to allyship, a lot of time people don't think it's their place to speak up. I think we were all discussing this last night. I think that, to stick your neck out on behalf of another person or another group of people takes a certain amount of courage and confidence to do that. Something in the work that I do with Queer Capita is to constantly remind people, okay, we have to bring people who aren't just queer into the fold here so that they can be a part of what we're doing and the work we're doing. Because when it comes to making and enacting change, you need the buy-in from people who aren't just from within your group. From a financial perspective, a lot of the time you need someone who's holding the purse strings who might not be queer and might not be Black to sign off on that. And so that's allyship. That's the importance of allyship. I think that it looks in a myriad of ways. Like, Kimbra, if you were to do a campaign and to commit to, okay, this amount of money or this percentage of money is going to go towards this charity that I care about, you would need people on your team, at your label, or whoever you're working with to be allies, be your ally and say, okay, we're going to support that. And we're going to help you do that. That's allyship. And so I think we don't often name it enough, but I think that that's what it looks like in practice.
I have so many thoughts and opinions. I'm going to try to distill it. I think allyship is paramount to any discussion, because I think that those of us who are marginalized have to do the heavy lifting. And you need people to speak for you. You also need people that can, and I'm going to try to say this the correct way, be better understood by the people whose minds you are trying to change. Like, I'm a Black guy. If I speak about Black issues, you're going to be like, of course he's talking about Black issues. He's Black. But I also know, rightly or wrongly, if a white dude is talking about Black issues to a group of white people, they're probably going to hear him or identify with him, relate to him better than they're going to relate to me. So allyship is important. I think a lot of people are afraid of being allies because you mentioned earlier there's the I don't know enough piece. There's the I'm afraid of backlash piece. And it also, allyship makes you uncomfortable. Like, I don't know a lot about I don't know what it's like to be trans, but I stand up for my trans family because they deserve being stood up for. My Jewish brothers and sisters, my Asian brothers and sisters, like, they all need to be stood up for by somebody who has more privilege relative to who they are. So I think that it is really important for, even within marginalized groups, people to stand up for other marginalized groups. But I do think that, cisgender, heterosexual white men really need to do a shit ton more heavy lifting than they're doing right now. So allyship is super important, not passive allyship, vocal allyship, loud allyship. You know, speak so that your people can hear you.
So well said, both of you. And yeah, I echo exactly what you're saying. It's so important for the burden not to be on marginalized communities to fight their fight alone. And there is this element of fear of not saying it the right way, but that's one thing I was talking with Matt about last night. Is I really like the name of this organization, ShowUp. It's like just be there and raise your hand and say yes, I'm supportive of this cause, and there are people that can help you learn more, and people that can help you that you can just give the floor to as well. You can just be there and say, I support this. Listen to them and what they have to say.
Around the death of George Floyd, I was very moved to do more, and especially around the issue of white privilege. I was really scared because, it's uncomfortable to admit how little you understand something that you haven't had to understand. It's just, I did a series called Down the Rabbit Hole. It's on YouTube, and it was an Instagram live series where I just invited my friends in the music industry who all were people of color. In fact, not all of them. Some were different white folk that worked in the areas of race at various universities. And we had conversations, not with the intention for me to be educated as such, but, the intention to kind of put myself in a place where I could have conversations around what I can do better. And there were moments where I had to, really check myself on assumptions I had, things that I needed to work on. And I wanted to do that in front of my fan base because, it's uncomfortable, but it's also important that they saw that Kimbra can be called out on something and corrected, and also it can be done with compassion, and she'll get out the other side, and everyone will actually feel way better after it. And none of my friends are gonna be nasty to me. They're just gonna be like, hey, I'm just gonna help you reword that because that actually, was a little derogatory what you said there, and I know you don't realize it because you haven't had to, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. It was a great series. One of my friends, Aaron Bird, who's a DJ, a host on KCRW, brought a really interesting word to the table that I think hasn't been mentioned yet. He said, yes, I do need an ally in this work, but what I really need is an accomplice. And he said, there's a difference. He said, allyship's the bare minimum, actually. Yeah, you want to speak out for the cause and show up? Great. No, I need you to be an accomplice in this. And God, it really struck me over the head that, just what is it, of course allyship is what we should be focusing on, but how can we even take it further, both those words are really cool, I think. And I'm just so thankful that he it was just like, let me actually take that a step further. Just love to have discussions more around that because, our voice is the first step and then our action is the second.
Thank you. And thank you all, guys. We're running up on time here. I don't know that we've got time to take questions in the room and share from the room, but if you have them or if you'd like to talk with us, come join us at the end of the panel, and we'll wrap it with you. Thank you to you guys all for being involved, and thank you to all you for being here. You're here, I presume, because you care. And I want to say again that there isn't a qualification to do this work. If you care in our mind, that's enough. And we are all capable. We're all smart enough. We're all creative enough. And we all care enough to do good work. And so just being here, hopefully, has given you guys some ideas about how you might move forward. And don't doubt for a second that you can't change the fucking world if you decide to, right? Because we're all just people, and the people that are changing the world are just people like me and like Kimbra and like you. So thank you. This has been a blast.